we are now living another industrial revolution, which is what they call Industry 4.0 or artificial intelligence, exponential technologies. There are different names. And what is the next level? We learn how to satisfy our needs. We learn how to have houses, how to have education, how to have healthcare, but we are stressed. So the next level is to remove the stress.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nusky here. I'm your host. Thank you very much for joining us and for all of your wonderful warm feedback. It is making all of the difference knowing that the show is making a difference for you. Now, on today's call, I'm with Giulio Zecca, and we're going to be talking about advancement in technology, and we're going to talk about how to maximize human potential and build profitable organizations that last, alongside many other wonderful topics. So with that, Giulio, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Ray. It's great that you have me here. I'm excited to be on your show.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you. Now, you and I were just talking about the ups and downs of weather, and you were mentioning that you had ice on the canals last week, but it's a spring day there today.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain that. It's really uncommon, to say the least, and I'm excited. I hope it lasts. Honestly, I'm more of a warm kind of weather rather than frozen kind of weather, if you see what I mean.
So where are you located?
I'm in the Netherlands at the moment.
Beautiful. What a wonderful place to be. If you had to be locked down anywhere, that would have to be the place that I would choose, I have to say. Now, given that with everything that's going on in the world, Giulio, you guys in lockdown or anything like that at the moment?
Well, ups and downs, I would say, as any other country. At the moment, there is some curfew after 9 p.m. until 4:30, 5 a.m. So it makes movement a bit more difficult, especially for the youth. There is a huge international community here in Rotterdam where I live, especially students and PhD. So it's, young people, they love to party, they love to meet people. It's quite a restriction for them. Having said that, I see that people in general are a bit more relaxed than in other countries. There's no mandatory use of face mask when you go outside.
Right.
As opposed to Italy, for example, Spain, where it is mandatory to have your face mask anywhere, any step you do outside of your door, you need to have that. So, what baffles me, I lived in 4 different countries, so I have friends from different countries and family, and a bit scattered around. And I see different things and sometimes contrasting. So the rules in one country are different and sometimes contrasting as the rules in another country. And I'm like, guys, it's the same thing. How does it work?
Yeah, how can there be different rules for the same issue? Well, look, thank you for sharing. Now, I just want to give the My Future Business audience some context, Giulio. You hold a Master's in Computer Engineering and you graduated with honours, and you got deeply involved with the Internet of Things. Now, I'd love to talk a lot more about that in a moment, and if we could, but before we do any of that, I'd love to learn more about you personally. Do you have any hobbies, any sports? What do you like to do with yourself when you're not working?
Well, that's very interesting. I would say as I was younger, I was doing a lot of sports. I've been playing basketball and tennis back to school, and then moving forward, football. I've been captain of the team for several years. We used to play five-a-side football. It's more like futsal or indoor football. It's very common in Italy where I grew up.
As it is here.
That's great.
Yes, indoor.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's much more practical, but I have to say that in Italy, we do play outdoors anyway. No matter the weather, you play outdoors, even the five-a-side. So
very brave.
You still have to face the cold weather. And then when I say the cold weather now, after having lived in Northern Europe, I think the cold weather in Rome is not that cold, right? It's a bit chilly at times.
and having been... Can I just ask? I was wondering, having been a captain of a team, do you think that that helps to form entrepreneurs to be better entrepreneurs?
That's a good question. I always thought in terms of management, because then it grew it made a career into management. But that's a very nice question, and I think honestly I never thought of that under this light, and I think it does. I'm just brainstorming with you. I'm
like
just
leadership
thinking out loud. I think it does. You have to exercise a bit of leadership. You have to. Also, honestly, sometimes it's a struggle. Sometimes it's a bit of a chore. It feels like you need to call people. Hello, are you coming to the match tomorrow? Oh no, sorry, my girlfriend wants to go out for dinner. Yeah, no, but you need to motivate them and
coordinate.
Sometimes feels like begging rather than guys. We're having fun. I mean, that's the purpose of it. We're doing a tournament, but it's for fun, right? We're not professionals. And sometimes feels like begging and motivating them and calming down the hot spirits sometimes when you need it. And sometimes the hot spirits was me, so that required double effort.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But it does require that type of leadership that you were saying. It's even to a very small extent probably, but it does put you into that kind of realizes other people, and then whatever we discuss, whatever strategy, whatever thing that's absolutely great before the match, that's in the match that counts. And there's no strategy. I mean, there is strategy, of course, but what happens in the match can be totally different than what you prepare for.
I wonder, moving forward a few years or back maybe, do you recall your first ever entrepreneurial experience? And what was it?
Wow. Yes. Entrepreneurial in vertical quotes, probably.
That first time you thought, you know what, there's something in this, I enjoy it.
I actually have a couple, but the one that's more interesting, well, the first one, yes, the first one, so I'll go with that one, is when I was at university. At a certain point, I really wanted to play video games. Like, you need a more than decent computer to play video games. Back then, we had computers like desktop computers all the time. They were quite heavy. But the advantage of that is that you could customize as much as you want. You could buy a piece of memory here and a hard disk there and a motherboard in another place. And so I started doing that and finding the best places online where you could buy that. And it was the first time, it was early 2000s, so it was not so widespread, the online commerce. And started buying a couple of pieces, and then I said, no, I don't want this. I want something better. And so I started buying cheap and selling at a higher price on the local market to make a margin. And with that margin, I could finally assemble my computer. And I had a great computer that lasted, I think, 4 or 5 years, and was it's a great machine. And it taught me two things. The first thing is that we can generate revenue by doing nice stuff. It was more of a game than entrepreneurship at that time. It was like, okay, let me see how much I can buy cheap in stock. Even stickers. I was buying stickers of the AMD and Intel microchips and buying them in stocks, like in a bulk, like 50 at a time, and then selling them by the unit so that I could make a very small margin on that. But still, it was a margin. It was fun.
Yeah.
That's the most part of it. And I say, hey, first of all, you can generate revenue by doing these kind of things. And second, I can maximize my potential. That became much bigger later, but I want to maximize what I can do. I cannot have the best computer in the world, but I can maximize the type of computer I can have. I don't have to buy the first entry price because I don't have the means. What can I do to upgrade myself and to maximize what I can have?
It reminds me of the statement, it's not that we don't have enough resources, it's that we lack resourcefulness. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes. I think in the vast majority of cases, there might be exceptions, right? I don't want to say always, but in the vast majority of cases, it's resourcefulness. I love Robert Kiyosaki. I used to read a lot of from what he wrote back in the past, and still there are some tenets that I still keep hold dear in my mind. And one is, don't think in terms of I cannot afford it. Think in terms of how can I afford it?
Yes.
And it triggers a different switch in the brain. And I think for entrepreneurs, and for companies in general, because companies are made by people. And now we talk a lot, we as a society start talking a lot about intrapreneurship. So people who have these sort of entrepreneurial skills, but that don't want to do something by themselves. And so they have this attitude of entrepreneurs, but working as employees in a company. And I found this beautiful and absolutely needed. And then it's where resourcefulness can be most applied. It's not the I can't afford it, it's how can I afford it? It's not the that doesn't work, it's how can I make it work differently? It's not that's not optimal, it's how can I make it better? How can I make it different?
Yeah,
and that's absolutely the key to innovation, to disruption, to positive disruption. I'm all about positive disruption. And we have seen examples in this last year, 2020, unfortunately. But it happens. There are some things we don't have control over. The only thing we have control over, and for which I do my best to prepare the people I work with and the people I know, even if I don't work with them, it's just people I know, is to prepare for the change, prepare to adapt for the change. There are ways of doing this. There are ways to trick your brain, trick in vertical quotes, right? Trick your brain to think in terms of how can I do it differently? How can I do it better? How can I do something different? How can I afford it? It seems a small distinction. It is a small distinction, but it actually triggers a huge difference in the approach you would have in everything that happens in life, every issue, every problem, every challenge, even every positive things.
I take away a couple of things from this, Giulio. And the first one is that change is omnipresent, and our mindset makes all the difference. So thank you for sharing. Now, I know that as an educated individual as you are, you don't get to the top of the tree by not educating yourself. Do you still read? Do you like to read books? And what are you reading at the moment?
Yeah, well, what am I reading at the moment is a bit of a tricky question, because I have this, I don't know if it's a bad habit. I'm curious, so I start reading this. Oh, I love it, and I start reading it, and 1/3 into that is, okay. I also need to do something else in my day, and then I drop it, and then I pick up something else.
Sounds like me.
I think, you can see my library behind it, and I think that I have 3 books actually on my bedside table, so to speak. And one is from. I think it's actually here, if I recall correctly. Yes, How to Win Friends and Influence People,
of course,
which is by Dale Carnegie, and I think I'm reading it. I'm on purpose very slowly. I really want to read. It's not like speed reading kind of thing. I never did a course of speed reading. I think I will at a certain point.
Be interesting.
I want to read more. But that is the kind of book where I do not want to do speed reading. I really want to savor and absorb each word, because I think it's absolutely important. And so that's how I'm approaching that, like more like a manual to read, absorb, try to implement, go back to it, to the same chapter, and do it again, and then move forward slowly, and like an ongoing training rather than a book, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely.
The other book is Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss.
Oh, yes.
I think it's absolutely great, because it's short pills of wisdom, short pills of real life. And I can read it usually in the morning, just before starting anything. I wake up in the morning, I do my routine, and then read one chapter. One chapter means one person being interviewed by Tim Ferriss about what are their habits, the failures, so to speak, and the successes. And there's always in each chapter, there's at least a handful of takeaways.
Yes, that's fantastic. I think about mentors and I think about routine quite a bit, and I like to talk about it. Do you have any mentors outside of books that you follow in your space?
Well, definitely, yes. So I always tend to have at least one business coach or one mentor. And hopefully stacking up. Usually, I think until last year, I was doing a lot of work with Eric and Meads, who is a Canadian, South African. He lived in the UK. Now he lives in, in Dominican Republic. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's done amazing things, and he's a great public speaker. So I'm really thankful for the work that I could do with him for the business. And I think the first course I did with him was business freedom. So how to set up a business in a way that gives you freedom. And it doesn't mean like that kind of freedom entrepreneurship. I go to Bali and I'm a digital nomad. It's more back to what we already discussed about Robert Kiyosaki. It's how do you set up a business in a way that you are on the business and you're a businessman rather than self-employed and everything is on your shoulder. Everything is on, you have the burden, you have the responsibility, you are doing everything. And that's a key message, I think, for anyone in business, and you have an audience of entrepreneurs. It's sometimes not an easy distinction, and it's a fundamental one. Because especially small entrepreneurs, they have this thing, am I doing enough?
Yeah.
Am I doing good enough? And they end up, some of them, and quit a job, and then they end up having several jobs because they need to do marketing, they need to do sales, they need to do operations, they need to do public relations, they need to do everything. They need to do legal, they need to do administration, and it's all a burden, and it's difficult to delegate. I had yesterday another coaching session with Marco Robert, who is a huge business entrepreneur, in the frame of another group coaching, and he was saying something along these lines. How it is fundamental to delegate. One of my questions was, I see people struggle, I see entrepreneurs struggling with delegation because they are very good at what they do. They're very effective. And so when they ask someone else, as a freelancer, as an employee, to do something, then they sometimes get frustrated by the results because they're not as good, they're not as fast, and or not as fast, and or not as expected because they have an idea in their mind, and then to transfer that idea to someone else, for that person to make it, it's tricky. And that's a crucial point, to learn to allow space for the other people to even to make mistakes and to experiment. And back to your question, the mentor I have since last year, so a bit of overlap, of course, is another Eric, actually, but this other one is French, Eric Beanzin.
Yep.
And I think, I like to think in terms of, one was my father in business, and the other one was the one who made me a man, so to speak. It's like, it really had a huge shift. It's a monumental shift that I had thanks to Eric Beanzin, and he also gets coached by huge names in the industry. So I cannot even say how much the impact is huge, and how much the transformation is huge. And the key message, which is already in the question you asked, is there is no way an entrepreneur or a leader or a manager can really grow and make the company grow if it's not, he or she is not growing in the first place.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is very beautifully summarized by John Maxwell, the guru of leadership internationally, and he used to say exactly this: like the leader of the company is the lid. So we call it the law of the lid. It's like you have a pan and you have a lid.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter how much people around you and below you are,
quote unquote,
powerful and enlightened and great at what to do and talented. If the leader does not grow, it's like you put a lid. Put a lid on the saucepan, and that's it. It doesn't grow. And I love that metaphor.
Yeah, no, I love that metaphor. Thank you for sharing all of that wonderful insight. Because I know that we seem to be our own worst enemies as solopreneurs, especially, and those who are coming out of an employment space, of which you've had experience with. Did you have to go through a learning phase to learn to let go?
I think it's an ongoing process, and it's never complete. Sorry again. I think, and the reason is, I mean, if we start from the principle that a business needs to grow continuously, they say it's either growth or death. Now, I don't want it to be that drastic, but for sure,
I understand.
There is a need to grow constantly. And as we grow, we will need to delegate to more people, and we will be more and more responsible for the people who are responsible for the results. And then we become responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the results.
Yep.
So we get a chain going on, and there are different levels. So it's not what the level of letting go as you start is like, okay, I need to start trusting other people and to start them feeding around and making some mistakes. It's a bit uncomfortable. It's a bit new.
Yep.
And then at the next level is I need to let it go of checking things, because at a certain level, and where I am now, for example, where I don't need a big team around, I can still have the last word on almost everything.
Yeah.
I check, does it fit my values, first of all?
Yes.
Does it fit my mentality? Does it fit what I want to communicate? And then it's sort of easy to check and and control. So the tenet of delegation is delegate and control. So let other people do things and then check that it's done according to what is
you expect. So it's
the desired outcome.
It's a bit of trust but verify, isn't it?
Exactly. And then at the end of the day, when you're until a certain level, you can still hold the reins of what is happening around you and have the last word and check things that are beyond a certain level. You can't do that. You can't, and you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I have examples of companies I work with or that I know where the CEO or the manager or the one who's in charge, whatever the label under his name is, he did a great job until a certain point, but then keeps on checking that things are done properly, and the person is exhausted.
Yeah. And
the business doesn't grow.
Yeah. Comes back to the lid, doesn't it? I'm wondering, can we shift gears possibly? And I'd love to talk about Innovachievers. First of all and foremost, where did you come up with a name like Innovachievers? It's wonderful.
Well, it's very simple and very complicated at the same time. It took me, I think, literally 6 months to find a name that I really liked. You know, the kind of brainstorming is, I don't want to rush into finding a name. Let's define what I want to do and how I can serve more people with my idea, and then the name will come. It didn't come up automatically. So I was brainstorming on every time I had an idea, just note that down on the same document. And then I was like, I'm about achievement and I'm about innovation. And then I was like, well, innovative achievers, it's a bit too long. Innovachievers, boom.
Yeah, there it is.
And I loved it.
Yeah, well, and when did this all come about for you? What was the catalyst, the genesis for Innovachievers? What drove you to this?
Well, I think there is not one catalyst, as in many things we have. It's not just one thing. It's like a puzzle, and there's different pieces, and at a certain point you start seeing the figure forming in the puzzle that you're creating, and then at a certain point there is one piece, and bam, the puzzle is complete.
Yeah.
And I think the main emotional driver, at least, is that I worked in different companies, in different cultures, because I worked and lived in 4 different countries with international customers. So it's a huge exposure, of which I'm really happy about. Mm-hmm. And something I was not so happy about, or to be more honest and straightforward, you used to drive me mad, is to see that things are done and really, like, why are you making things in this way?
Yes.
Why are you making me work on this and I'm not good at that? And you make my colleague work on the things I'm good at and he would be good at doing what I'm doing.
Yes, alignment.
Or I'm a bit like that also in private life. I'm getting better at that, at not having this kind of perfectionist attitude.
Yes.
I want to optimize everything. So I understand in private life, it's right and it's healthy not to do that all the time.
Yep.
Whereas in a company, it's like, why are we doing things with more effort?
Yes.
And the thing that you really, really annoyed me, and it really was a deal breaker in many circumstances. Deal breaker doesn't mean you stop working with people, right? But it's like,
course.
I understand there is a wall, there's a separation, and I want to be very aware of that. is the willingness to solve the problem.
Yes.
And when I say the problem, I don't mean the effect that we see, but to solve the cause of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sit here and I think about all of the things we could possibly talk about, because this rabbit hole goes deep. Now, I know that you do public speaking, and that's a big arm of what you do. Talk us through that experience and what Innovachievers does for its clients.
Well, I think there are a couple of things here. Really, there's public speaking, there's what Innovachievers can do and does for clients. Public speaking for me is a way to really communicate the idea, to communicate the vision which is we can really work and live in a different way. And not only that, I think we are on the tipping point, on the flipping point of a society change. And I started thinking of that some time ago. Actually, it was summer 2019. I went to Oslo for a public speaking course, funny enough, for I think that was the advanced course. And I was in Oslo and I was visiting, and there were pictures in one of the main squares. It was a sunny day, and then it started raining. It was it's Northern Europe, right? So yeah, exactly. And I remember I was looking at this picture and watching attentively the people inside the picture. And basically it was Oslo 100 years ago. And people were, I don't know if you have an image of Northern Europe, but at least for us in Europe, Northern Europe is rich countries,
yes,
with a very good welfare, with a decent healthcare system, and are quite advanced in terms of society and mentality. So that's what I expect from Norway, for example.
Yep.
And then I go to Oslo and I see that 100 years ago, which is, of course, a huge amount of time, but it's not that huge amount of time.
No, in the big
there were
scheme
pictures of people living, exactly, there were pictures of people living in huts and not having the right to vote because they were too poor.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, it was like being slapped left and right at the same moment. It's
Couldn't
like,
believe it.
People in this country, which is one of the most advanced in Europe, were still living in huts 100 years ago. I mean,
only 100 years
back. My grandfather was almost around that age. He was born, and they could not vote. People who were too poor could not vote. And I was like,
that's only one generation ago, really, isn't it? You know.
Yes, and I was like, whoa, and that made me think. How did we live 100 years ago? How did we live 200 years ago? And how did we live 300 years ago? And how do we live now?
Yep.
All the problems that we have now, it's actually on average, of course. I mean, there's still poorness in the world. There's still a lot of injustice, and there's a lot of inequalities. But at least in the western part of the world, the industrial revolutions, because that's what I learned when I started looking into that, it's basically each industrial revolution brought us one step up in the pyramid of needs. For those of you who are familiar with the Maslow pyramid of needs. Yeah, exactly. So we stepped up and stepped up and stepped up, and now we are at a moment where we are in the safest age of all, because really, we don't have to struggle with living in huts and living in poverty and not having education. When I say how did we live 100 years ago, it's really how did we study? What was the level of education? What was the level of work, of labor rights? What was the level of health? On average, again, talking about average. And think about now, it's laughable, so to speak.
Yeah.
And still is the age where we have the most stress ever. So there is
it's irony, isn't it?
Disconnection there. There is a huge disconnection.
Yeah.
And for me, the turning point is to understand that we are now living another industrial revolution, which is what they call Industry 4.0 or artificial intelligence, exponential technologies. There are different names for
the same
mainly the same thing.
Yeah.
We are living a revolution. Our society is going through a revolution. And what is the next level? We learn how to satisfy our needs. We learn how to have houses, how to have education, how to have healthcare, but we are stressed. So the next level is to remove the stress, is to go towards fulfillment, towards gratification, towards self-enlightenment is the highest level. I don't want to get that far because maybe it's the next generations that we will not see. But at least in this generation, this present moment, we can work in it in a way that allows us to go through this level. And why is it so? Because, like it or not, some people say they love working, some people hate it. I don't want to enter the debate.
Yep.
But work is important. If we think that people, on average, again, work 8 hours a day, it's 1/3 of the day.
Yeah.
It's important for our fulfillment. The human being is engineered for achievement, as Zig Ziglar used to say. We are really created evolutionary, and we evolved as human beings. We evolved to solve problems, for gratification, to achieve something. And work is so important in our society that we talk. It creates one good part of the day. We talk with our family. We talk about that with our friends, even too much. Sometimes it becomes a qualifier. What's your work?
Yes, that's true. Absolutely. This is a fantastic conversation because it's opening up a Pandora's box of thought content, and I wonder. It seems to me that we're going through a quickening phase in terms of technology. Every single day there seems to be some sort of new app or way we can use technology, some new hardware coming out, and it just happens so quickly. So I can see why we would be stressed. So what are some of the practical things that people can do when you work with them to de-stress?
Well, is a great question. And the first thing that I would say, that just first of all, that my approach is very dynamic, because I would love that people understand that there's not a single solution, and they start looking right and left and top and bottom for a solution that exists.
Yeah.
My approach is to help people and companies create their own solution. So when we work together, I see and hear and listen to what is your need, your goal, your struggle, and then work again together to address this. Because what is true, absolutely true, and absolutely working for one company does not necessarily work for the other company. So when they tell me, oh, we see that Agile works really well, what do you think? Should we do Agile? Or we see that Lean Six Sigma or Scrum or this or that.
Yep, all the tools.
Yes, of course, it does work. It's a proven methodology. The point is, does it work for you?
Yes.
What are you trying to address? And in general, the stressing goes to summarize to the real core of the matter, to summarize to the minimum terms, is having, first of all, efficient systems or efficient processes. And when I say processes, many people, I work in companies like that. We don't want processes. We are a young company. We are dynamic. We don't want processes. But processes doesn't mean that you need to have something written down on a stone, and then it's carved in stone, and then it can't be changed. And then if you don't do that, you'll be whipped in the meeting room. Come on. It's have an idea of what did we do that worked? Yes. Okay. And then see, does it still work? Yes. Can we optimize it? Maybe. How can we optimize it? Or let's see, where does it break somewhere? Where does it not work? Here. Okay, let's see. It's like a chain.
Is it like standards?
All the links are solid.
They're creating standards, aren't they, for their business?
I don't... In some cases, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also true that in some cases it's not about... I don't like the word standards too much.
Right.
I don't like standardization. I'm all about not standardization. I'm more about uniqueness rather than standardization.
Okay.
And at the same time, I have to say you're right. In some cases, the standard means this is the standard way we do things.
Yep.
This is the standard way of doing this process because it works. And then is there a margin for improvement? There should always be margin for improvement. If anything, for the reason you just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, technology is exponentially changing the way we live and work. So what worked yesterday is sort of working today and is obsolete tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we do need to have this range of innovation, of you would call it self-criticism or a self-skeptical approach. Like, okay, yeah, it worked. Is it still the best thing to do?
It's kind of like an ongoing.
For me, this is fundamental. And the other parts of efficient system and effective people. The mistake that I see many people working is the companies or managers try to push people to work like machines. Do work, do in a repeatable way, do it faster, do it quicker. We're not machines.
No, we're human beings, aren't we? And that really stands out for me when I watched a number of your videos when you're giving presentations. You have a connection, you know how to work with people and bring the best out of them. Now, with all that being said, Giulio, when people want to connect with you and start working with you, what is the process and where are they going to go to find you?
Well, the first place, the place where I'm most present is LinkedIn at the moment. So Giulio Zecca. Or, of course, on my website, which is innovachievers.com. Again, it's the contraction between innovative and achievers.
Love it.
Comes Innovachievers. All social media, but really where I am most present is LinkedIn. And how does it work? I work with different level with different people. So the most important thing is to connect first of all and have a discussion and see, okay, what is your need and what can I do for you? We have a 15-minute chat. It's a bit of a discussion like we're having now, just shorter.
Yep.
And just usually takes 15 minutes to really see, are we on the same page? Can I help you? And that's fundamental.
That's the good starting point to touch base with Innovachievers. Now, when you get there, you'll go to innovachievers.com. I'll be making sure that you have a link back to Giulio and innovachievers.com so that you can have that discovery call, that conversation to kick off your relationship with Giulio and his team. And Giulio, with all of that being said, it's just been such a wonderful conversation and spending some time with you on the My Future Business show today.
Thanks very much. It's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, and the time went past so quickly because I really enjoyed the chat. So thanks very much for having me here.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.